in any series besides Formula One, that is absolute garbage. Leclerc's response was basically, "Oh, okay. Well, if that's how we're racing now, then that's how we're racing now. It can't be as dominant as this year, right? 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 Please." Um, I think Albon in a Williams can be dangerous in a good way.
Hello and welcome back to episode 2 of the new season of Georgie Stripping the Dipping. I'm your host, F1 Blag. And today we pick up where we left off with our interview with friend of the show, professional race driver and driver coach, Mike Ogren. Last week we caught up with Mike, heard about his success last year, and indeed some of the behind the scenes on how much it costs to go racing. If you haven't listened to that episode yet, you may want to try that one first. But today we hear about Mike's experience as a driver coach, his opinions on the rules of engagement in Formula One, stay tuned for that one, and some predictions for the Formula One season in 2024. So without further ado, here we are, back with Mike, who certainly doesn't sit on the fence. I remember the first episode that we did back in season 1, I became obsessed briefly with Skip Barber Racing School because I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to trick my wife into going on holiday. And then I was like, I just need to pop out. Friends of the show. So we've had a few recurring guests. One of them is Taylor Ferns. And I think it was an F4 car. She did a couple of days there. I think Lynn St. James was there as part of a Women in Motorsport North America event. And so it reminded me again of Skip Barber. So is that where you do most of your coaching, or do you tend to accompany other drivers at circuits when they're having weekends? Like, how's the coaching looking this year?
Yeah, kind of all of the above. So this past year, I did a lot of Skip Barber Racing Schools. Kind of the 3-day program, maybe that you were mentioning there, 2-day advanced schools, that kind of thing. And then I also did SRO, the one of the professional racing organizations here in the United States. And it has a global, maybe even more popular in Europe, SRO stuff. But anyway, did most of the season as the Skip Barber driver coach for the SRO campaign. So I think 4 drivers in the touring cars, looking at their video and data, helping them go faster. And then, I expect it'll look pretty similar this year. I think I've been fortunate to maybe bring on a few more personal clients and kind of accompany them to some racing and some track days and that kind of thing. But I expect and hope that it'll look fairly similar to last year, if not, even busier. And I'm hoping to be a little bit more, I'd say local. I love going to Sebring. It's my favorite track. It's relatively close. And it's a lot nicer to be able to go to a track that you can drive, 2.5 hours to, rather than fly across the country all over the place. But hey, I'm not going to say no to that when that's what when the opportunity's there to go do that. Sometimes you have to. So.
No, absolutely. And I suppose, it could become quite a busy profession when you're not racing. You're there coaching, and some of that can involve travel. Well, I guess like most things in America, they involve travel, given how big your country is. So.
That's exactly right. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. So, right, okay, here we go. This is my kind of amateur go-karting level of driver etiquette, and you're going to tell me why I'm wrong, right? So when I feel like in Formula One, I've lost touch with what the rules are or what the rules of engagement are. Because when let's say I go-karting and they give you a briefing before, typically what I remember them saying is, look, if you're going to try and overtake, it's your responsibility to do it cleanly, right? And that's kind of in my brain, in my heart, what I think's right. But anyway, in Formula One, you often see, and I think they've rewritten the rules in the last few years, we might call it the Max Verstappen era, that, if you're up the inside, and this might be different for single seaters. If you're up the inside and you're sort of a certain distance along, like your front axle overlaps their back axle, for example, then it's your corner. I've heard commentators say it's their corner or whatever, and people on Twitter. So can you elaborate on that? Is that the case, or does it differ from series to series, or is there an international kind of etiquette that's in drivers' heads?
Sure. So I think there's a lot to unpack there. I think the way that the Formula One rules are written, or at least, well, I shouldn't say that because I've not seen a Formula One rule book, but the way that Formula One rules are enforced uh, encourages me to believe exactly as you said. If the nose is ahead at, it seems to be around the apex of a corner, um, that inside driver more or less owns the corner and has rights to, take whatever line they want to out of the corner. Um, in any series besides Formula One, that is absolute garbage. So like I said, I think the way that it's enforced in Formula One, if that's how the rules are, okay, then you have to drive to what the rule book says or what the race control is going to enforce. Um, but that is very, very uncommon and not really. I'd say sporting would be a good way to put it. Um, as you said, in let's say go karts, a lot of, let's say, rental go kart places have, the track is surrounded inside and outside by like barricades, right? So if I beat you to the apex of a corner and you're still, next to me but not quite, alongside, I can just track out and drive you right into the wall. That doesn't seem right. Therefore, I guess the assumption is you're supposed to just lift and yield if you don't beat me to the apex of the corner. That is not very. It's not how that's enforced anywhere else in the world. It's not how rules are written anywhere else in the world. There's a general expectation that if cars are more or less alongside each other, let's say at least half, different rule books say different things. Some say, if the nose is at the rear axle, or if the nose is at the door, or if the nose is at the front axle, or whatever, then you're obligated to give racing room, whether that's on the inside or the outside. And then racing room is generally agreed as about a car's width, you know, um, plus or minus, I'd say a little bit is kind of okay, um, if that makes some sense. But yeah, without going too far into it, and maybe some follow up questions will help parse it out. But very, very different in Formula One compared to, I'd say, any other form of racing in the world.
You heard it here first from an official racing coach, right? There you go, guys. Listen to that. I mean, I think yeah, I'm not an expert in motorsport. I've been watching Formula One as a fan for a decent while. Let's say this will be probably the 30th anniversary, which is albeit I was a kid when I started. And I think it was only like maybe 3 years ago, 4 years ago, that you started hearing this phrase about getting to the apex first. And I think, as you say,
Hmm.
as a driver, if you're in a multi-million or multi-billion pound sport, and it's sort of the team, gets a bonus for winning the championship, then it is incumbent on you as a professional, I'm sure, to race to the way that the rules are enforced. So completely
Hmm.
get that. But equally, if it's on you to get to the apex first, we've seen it. I've mentioned Max Verstappen. People will call me bitter. You can see drivers basically not brake, like coming off the brakes or braking extremely late, so making up a huge distance from the braking point to the apex to be ahead,
Hmm.
and then claiming they don't have control. Oh, I understeered, sorry, or just
Hmm.
and that takes them to the edge of the circuit. So I suppose that approach is not going to win you friends at Sebring or at Skip Barber, perhaps.
Yeah, no, I think you made a lot of good references there that I can kind of build on. I think for one, I think the way that Formula One is enforced encourages exactly like you said, for reasons that you laid out perfectly. And I think Verstappen was a culprit in uh, at least one very clear example this past season, where he drives into turn one, uh, gets to the apex first. I want to say it was Hamilton on the outside, but I could be wrong. And went off the outside edge of the track on track out, so exceeded track limits on his own. Let alone, drove the other car, well past track limits, because obviously there's another car inside of him. If you're going so fast that you can't keep your car on the racing surface, that's just dangerous, regardless of what the rules say. And I want to say he was not penalized for that, but you probably remember better than I do, if that was the case or not. I know it happened at Spa maybe last year or the year before. Similar kind of thing, pushed someone to the outside of the track, drove off track himself, and gave the other driver basically, uh, let alone no racing room, negative racing room, plus at least a car width. Um, and I think kind of the turning point was the Verstappen Leclerc incident maybe 3 years ago, something like that now, where Leclerc's response was basically, "Oh, okay, well if that's how we're racing now, then that's how we're racing now," because he was brought up in a way much like what we've been talking about: give each other racing room. The onus is on the overtaking driver to make a clean pass, et cetera, et cetera. And I'll also say that it depends on Formula One drivers are have a job to try to win every race, um, you know, and that's that. Now, it's also kind of a long-term thing. These guys are racing 20 plus times against each other throughout a season, let alone over the course of multiple seasons. Well, Lando Norris, for example, I think you made a good. Uh, you already referenced that Lando kind of just has let Max through a couple of times when he was in front of him. Um, I would have liked to have seen him fight a little harder, but maybe in 2024, 2025, if McLaren puts together a car that's actually capable of fighting for wins, I'm willing to bet you Max is going to give Lando an inch more than he otherwise might have. Well, maybe not Max. Another driver would give maybe an inch more than they otherwise might have, because of that long term kind of payoff, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense, and maybe as we like draw towards the end of the episode, we could actually look ahead to 2024 because it is quite interesting. And in my head,
Sure.
I've always had like the kind of post Abu Dhabi 21 as a sort of Lewis Hamilton fan. I hate to think
Man.
about opening the season and the W15 being terrible. So I've probably had a mental block thinking about it. But before
Fair
we,
enough.
yeah, exactly. Before we draw to a close the discussion about racing etiquette, you were talking about that move. I think it was Max Verstappen on Charles Leclerc, and I think it was at Las Vegas. And turn one, lap one, as you say, I think Charles had put it on pole. Max got the inside, and then yeah, Max
Hmm.
just ran off track, and clearly Charles had nowhere to turn in. Max got a
Yep.
penalty, but it was not to give back the
Okay.
place. It was like a 5 second penalty. So
Yeah.
obviously it didn't affect him.
Yep.
You know.
Yeah, that sounds right, and I think the commentators kind of, said much like what you're saying. Okay, well, the Red Bull has been whatever 30 seconds clear of the field every race. Do you really think a 5 second penalty is going to matter? The only chance
Mm.
was for someone to try to stay in front of Max and keep him bottled up or held in check. So the penalty maybe didn't match the crime there. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know if you saw the Brazilian Grand Prix last year, but I think the highlight of my season, and I say that as someone that follows Lewis Hamilton the most, but I've been watching long before he started, like was it's like a 20 lap battle at least between Checo Perez and Fernando Alonso, and you could tell
Mm,
that Checo had a slight pace advantage, but Fernando kept Perez behind. Then Perez got past. But Fernando managed to kind of set him up through a multitude of corners and then make the move. And for me, in terms of racing room and the fun of motorsport, I love to see those multi-lap battles or indeed those multi-corner battles. And I suppose they're
no,
less possible if you're running people off at the first opportunity. I don't know if that's the same for you.
one, no, I 100% agree, and that I do very specifically remember that race, and thinking, wow, how uncommon that is, in Formula One, where yeah, these cars are just so fast that a difference in cornering speed or tire, 2 laps fresher tires can often mean the difference between being able to hang with someone or not. And yeah, that battle was incredible, and that's not possible without two drivers recognizing, hey, we're both turning into this corner at, I don't know, 130 miles an hour, and if we don't give each other room, like we might both be out of this race or worse, in the hospital, something like that. And I think that's a big part of it, that you have to remember that, okay, even if somebody even if you own the corner and or somebody dive bombs you and makes a bad move or something, like partly out of self-preservation, okay, well, is it worth me just driving them off the track or turning in and knowing that they're going to get a penalty when there is risk that you yourself are going to get taken out of the race, due to, of course, somebody else's maybe mistake. You're well within the rules to do that. Um, but what good is, a penalty for the other driver if, you're sitting in the garage and your car's in pieces?
It's a huge shout, and I suppose I'm slightly too young to remember Senna racing at his prime, but maybe the parallel that people draw between Max Verstappen and Ayrton Senna now is they position their car when overtaking in a way that asks the other driver, "Do you want to have an accident, or do you want to let me through?" Not an accident, that sounds harsh, but
Hmm.
do you want contact, or are you going to
Hmm.
just acquiesce and give me the corner? So
Sure. And,
yeah.
and I think it's I'm shocked that that is so successful in Formula One, where you have open wheel cars that are very, very sensitive to, any aerodynamic pieces being dislodged or damaged or cut tires from wings or whatever it is. Whereas, the cars that I race, sports cars, touring cars, much more common to, oh, okay, fine, you're gonna, come right up and next to me, and we're gonna, rub doors a little bit. It's much more common because there's it's much more difficult to have kind of a catastrophic issue just from a small touch than it is in Formula One or any open wheel series.
No, absolutely. And as we move into the sort of 2024 predictions, I'm really intrigued to hear what you think. Um, when you say rub doors, that reminds me that somehow I've stumbled across a British touring car account that just posts 1990s clips, and I remember watching the series at the time. And it
Is
is
this are you going to say the Miata thing?
oh well, there's a
Um,
heck of a load of things, but
okay, because I
essentially, no, go on, tell me
okay.
what's that? What's the Miata thing? Go on.
Oh, so there's a clip. I thought you were going to talk about a clip where it's somewhere in Europe because they're
Hmm.
right-hand drive cars, and I believe it's Miatas. And these guys are come out of a corner and they're side by side, and it's I think they're Miatas, something relatively low horsepower. So it's a long straightaway. Anyway, so they're like really close together, trying to kind of position the cars, come up to this corner, and this guy reaches out his window and bumps the mirror in so the other driver can't see. And it's just one of my favorite clips of, again, door to door racing. Guy, I don't know if he was trying to be a jerk or if he was just being funny or whatever, but it is hilarious. So, again, that's door to door kind of low horsepower racing. I'd say kind of at its hilarious best.
Oh my god! I think
So,
everybody listening is going to go and Google that clip. I actually had not seen that, but that is the sort of I don't know. You can imagine that in modern racing, and maybe yeah, to add to it, if someone was filming from the perspective of the driver at the time, that would probably go viral in a second if it hasn't already.
for sure. Yeah.
Fantastic.
So anyway, sorry, you were
No, no,
referencing
no.
something
Well, I
else
was
and
just
I
saying
jumped the gun.
the in touring cars, and particularly in the 90s, I don't know what it was about it. Maybe they still race like this. I've lost track with the series, but the kind of the rubbing, I guess that phrase rubbing is racing, like the amount of,
Hmm.
well, we're going to go through the corner, I'm not going to force you off, but I am going to basically lean on your car, and I know you're going to lean on me when the
Hmm.
track goes the other direction. There's a
Hmm.
kind of fine line between the respect that it takes to just get to that limit where you're giving the driver a chance and you're racing really hard, but you're not putting them in danger, and you're absolutely not driving them off circuit. It's amazing. It's some of my favorite clips. If you look up BTCC 1990s, it's fantastic.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Fantastic. Well, that was the time machine. That was the kind of DeLorean taking us back to my childhood, but like bringing us back to 2024. And yeah, just my field of knowledge is F1. Like, what is not going to surprise us about 2024? And perhaps do you have like a wild card, like what might surprise us about 2024 in the season?
Within Formula One?
Within Formula One, but like, actually, do you know what? You tell me. What's the surprise and what's the kind of,
Sure,
oh, that's always going to happen?
sure. So I think, I mean, it'd be difficult to bet against Red Bull and well, particularly Max this year. I'd say, unfortunately, I meant to touch on this when we were talking about kind of the close racing stuff. The new regulations, that came out a couple of years ago, have been tremendously successful, in my opinion, from allowing cars to follow and race and repass and actually go at each other for more than a corner at a time. Um, I say that knowing full well that that's also been the era that's allowed this latest Red Bull car to just completely dominate with Max driving it. So I think it's going to be difficult to close the gap to Max in particular, because I've read some stories that the because Red Bull was so fast and so dominant, they were able to turn their development or turn ahead to the development of this year's car earlier than everyone else, and therefore the car is probably going to be faster out of the box and blah blah blah. So I think unfortunately it's going to be really difficult, but I think that it can't. Well, I hate to
Careful.
say that. I'm scared to say it out loud, but it can't be as dominant as this year, right? 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 Please. Um, so, but we'll see. I think the McLaren obviously showed massive improvement once they kind of changed their development direction, and they're just going to continue in that direction. I think Ferrari. You have to at least hope that they're gonna maybe figure something out, and then they'll probably disappoint us again. But I say that as a kind of as a Ferrari fan. Um, Mercedes, I think, uh, man, I hope they're there. It's hard to tell with again kind of the rumors you hear out of the team of like, okay, new development direction and et cetera, et cetera. Um, I think they'll be closer than they were this year. Um, and I'll give you my wild card is Williams. I think Albon in a Williams can be dangerous in a good way. I don't mean that in the dangerous way that we're talking about of bad racecraft, but I think he can be very very strong this year. If they can make any sort of step forward, because he's been since he's left since he's made it to Williams, that dude has been awesome to watch.
Yeah, he absolutely has been, and he's obviously got an American teammate who, credit to Williams, they've given him another season, and in a way, that's in a cutthroat world of Formula One. I've got this thing like I feel like James Vowles, the team principal at Williams, is like a master leader, and he kind of needs to write a book or something because he seems to get the best out of the team. He's led the resurgence, but also the chance he's giving Logan Sargent is quite impressive, and hopefully it pays off for
Yeah,
sure.
it's interesting. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, because I remember, they were talking about the whole, okay, is he going to be retained for this year and whatever. And I think I forget which race it was, late in the season, maybe, I don't know, second to last race or something, qualifying practice. I forget. They're
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, here's Logan, and he's been having kind of a tough year, but we'll see if he stays on. And they do that graphic where they show the last five results. I think last five qualifying results it was, and it was 20th, 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 and I was like, man,
Hmm.
how how can you keep someone that's the last five races in a row in qualifying? But I get they said I've read some stuff that said he's gotten closer to Albon, according to the race pace data and all this stuff. So they must see some things that are maybe not quite as obvious to the public as far as what the actual data looks like, or maybe his feedback post race is very good and car development, and they must like him and he must get along well with the team and Albon and stuff. So it's good to see not just get booted after one season. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, well, Logan Sargent, a fellow Floridian,
That's right.
we wish him well for the
Yeah,
season ahead.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's right.
I also wonder if you look at Red Bull and the kind of pressure cooker that they created by like continually firing rookie drivers. They had Gasly, got rid. They had Albon, they got rid. Like
Hmm.
Ricciardo obviously moved on of his own volition, but you had that sort of turmoil and it just created a lot of pressure. Now, Perez obviously soaked it up in his first year and did a great job. But even last season, if you look at his record, he clearly was dealing with something because he was
Yeah,
constantly driving off track or, failing when it came to putting a good Q1, Q2 lap in. So So maybe there's a
No, it's
method to the madness at Williams. Like, we don't want the next driver after that to think he's going to get fired if he makes one mistake. I don't know.
it's a tough balance, you know. It certainly is. You know, I think Red Bull probably is, yeah, a little bit on the extreme end of that. And it's funny you mentioned about Ricardo. You know, how do you think if we went back 5 years or whatever it was, he'd stay? I don't know, maybe. Um, it'd be a different world, that's for sure. Um, but anyway, no, and it's interesting. Alex Albon, very recently, I saw an interview. I don't know how long ago it was, but where he was talking about, you know, driving with Max as a teammate, and about he elaborated it well, and I'm not going to explain it as well as he did, because people always say like, oh, well, the car's built for Max, and you know, it's difficult to just step in and be competitive or whatever. And I think that points to a couple things. One, you know, Max is indeed very, very talented, because you've seen, you know, an Albon, a Gasly, Sergio Perez, Daniel Ricciardo, these guys elsewhere are pretty darn good, you know. And Perez, you know, was not terribly impressive this past year in a car that was, you know, has some of the best results of all time. So I think part of that points to Max's you know, talent for sure. But Albon talked very informatively about, you know, they like to say the car. Max in particular likes a car that drives on the nose, is kind of the saying, meaning it pivots around the front wheels. The back end is a little bit loose. It slides around a little bit, but that allows the driver to have pretty good control. But you have to be very on top of it. It can catch you out, you know, very easily, because of course the back end sliding around in a whatever 1,000 horsepower car is, you have to find a way to be comfortable with that, but it's very fast if you can harness it properly. And I would say the best racing drivers, the Formula One grid for sure, broadly speaking, would like a car that is set up more that way than, let's say, a lower level driver, an amateur level driver would want a car that feels a lot more stable. Well, Albon explained very well that he's like, yeah, look, I like a car that's a little loose, a little on the nose as well, but Max likes it even more so than I do. So okay, I'm a tenth off maybe at the start of the season, not so big of a deal, but they're going to give some priority to the faster driver, development of the car towards the faster driver. Um, and then, you know, okay, I'm a tenth off. Now I'm a tenth and a half off. Now I'm pressing even more to try to go faster. Now I make a mistake. Now I crash. Now I'm, you know, it's hard to regain confidence to drive a car that's, you know, a little bit maybe twitchier, a little bit more nervous. So then the gap grows even larger. Then you're pushing even more, and this cycle is very, very difficult to break. And he said it much more eloquently than I probably did. But that was kind of the gist, and I hadn't really heard um, someone explain it in a way that made as much sense to me as he did, rather than just saying, "Oh, well, the car's built for Max, and that's why he's faster than everybody."
It's a more nuanced conversation. I think so. We talked a bit about Williams. To respond to your prediction about Red Bull, the thing that's ominous
Mm,
for me is what you said earlier in the episode. Like, Max is able to do a stint where he's doing, you know, let's say it's like 120.8, 120.8, 120.8, 120.9, 120.8. Like, he's
yeah.
clearly driving within the limits of the car. Obviously, he's an amazing driver,
Yep.
which
Sure.
suggests that they're not pushing as if they have a kind of pace deficit. In, you know, you look at the other cars on the grid, they're hammering it, trying to make up for the car. So I have a theory that the RB18, before we even got to last year, the RB19, had like some monstrous advantage over the field.
Mm,
And essentially the smart, like, and these guys at Red Bull are competitors. They are so smart. If you are
hmm
like like a bit amateurish, like Williams in 1992, essentially lapped the whole field and won every single
yeah. Not.
race. And, you know, like they're not hiding the advantage. And then the regulations were changed. You lose your driver
Yep.
aids, and then Benetton come and win. Obviously, Michael Schumacher, amazing driver, but that was almost the beginning of the end for Williams. Like, if you're smart, like a Christian Horner and an Adrian Newey, why would you, as you said, the kind of Alan Prost adage, why would you
Yep.
spank the field by, you know, 3 pit stops or something? You would just eke out enough. And when you watch wet to dry races, you start to see that Red Bull don't know how hard to push. And sometimes they have a monstrous gap. I think it was Suzuka, not last year, the year before. So I back you up on that prediction. I've got this feeling that Red Bull, if a team gets close, they will just find the performance, and for me, that it
Yeah,
will be another championship for them.
sure. No, it's hard to disagree with. And I think something else that's maybe worth mentioning, since we talked about tires a little bit earlier too, is if you have a car that's so capable, it's also easier on the tires. So now you can, be more flexible with your pit stop strategy or whatever, compared to, let's say a Ferrari can run the same pace, but they have to run at 100%. Well, if the Red Bull can do it at 95%, they're going to make it whatever 5, 7, 10 more laps on the same set of tires, and that that's the race is over. They've got the tire advantage late in the race. They can undercut, they can overcut, they can do whatever they want, just from the car being able to produce the same lap times at a less, I'd say less risk or less hard on the car pace.
And you see that in the experience difference as well between the drivers. So something that I am among my friends known for is a slight agenda when it comes to kind of the comparison between Lewis Hamilton and George Russell. So I like George Russell, but as soon as it's George Russell versus Lewis Hamilton, I'm like, come on, stop. 8-time or 7-time world champion and like
Seven and a
104
half.
wins. We know
Yeah.
103 and a half wins, etc., etc. Versus one win and clearly a talent potential. But when you look at the race pace, first of all, setting the car up for race pace as opposed to one lap, and then like getting to the end of a stint and then having the legs to extend if necessary. Like
Mhm.
there's something about that talent, that maybe it comes with experience. I don't know.
Sure. Yeah, it's hard to teach, and yeah, the only way to learn is to get more seat time for sure. Yeah, from tire management, I'd say that's difficult to, like you said, to learn without doing.
And it's hard to teach, but if you sign up to a multi-lesson subscription with this driver coach, maybe you can
That's
learn it
right.
from Mike.
That's exactly right.
Brilliant. So, look, before we close, we talked a little bit about predictions for 2024, and we talked a bit about Formula One. At the start of the episode, you were like, "Yeah, do you know what? Those runoffs. If I was really looking to win that, I came fifth. I only got a track record at Sebring, etc. But it could have been faster. What,
Yeah,
let's say you're having your Christmas lasagna 2024. You've done the time lapse, so you're sitting down. You feel content with the year and how it's gone. What do you think it will take for you to have that contentment? I'm not saying you retire from racing, of course. You got to have your aspirations for 2025, but for you, what is the kind of goal or the kind of thing that you're really striving for this year?
sure. Pretty simple for me. I have had the good fortune to race in what we'd all kind of recognize as professional racing series, IMSA, SRO, a handful of times. My goal is to get back onto those grids this year, and again that comes through. It has nothing, not nothing, but it has some to do with driver talent and that kind of thing. But it has a lot to do with marketing and networking and business acumen and relationships and that kind of stuff. So it's difficult, but that's kind of what my aim is to be back at in an IMSA race or SRO race or that kind of thing. A whole season would be the dream, of course. I've yet to really be graced with that opportunity, but that's what I'm working towards, and to try to find a way to do that. The IMSA season's starting up here in the next couple of weeks with one of the most famous races in the world, the 24 Hours of Daytona, and I, am not currently slated to be taking part in that. So I'm about to miss my window to be, full season driver in IMSA, but that's the goal. If at the end of this year, if I have an opportunity to go do a few races in any of those pro series and hopefully show my competitiveness and the ability that I think and know that I have, that'll be really helpful towards that contentedness at the end of the year.
Absolutely, and I really wish you all the best. And you talk about the privilege of and the being graced with the opportunity to have that that chance in IMSA. Like it's been a real privilege, and it's been a great opportunity to have this conversation. And thank you, Mike, for all the insights you've given us. And yeah, it's been fascinating. It's been a real privilege for me. Thank you.
No, sure thing. I appreciate you guys having me on here and being able to just kind of talk about cars and racing and motorsports, and I'll do this any day of the week. So looking forward to the next time, hopefully.
Brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. We'll keep our eyes peeled for any announcements. We're following you on Instagram. Yeah, why don't you shout out your handles? Is it Mike.Ogren over at Instagram?
Yep, that's exactly right. So Instagram, Mike.Ogren. I actually recently just crossed 1,000 followers, something I'm very excited about. Doesn't sound like a lot, but it's been a shockingly long journey to get to 1,000. So hopefully that just keeps on climbing. And then it's Mike Ogren Racing over on Facebook. I do most of my contents on Instagram. I go hot and cold about how attentive I am to actually sharing stuff. So hopefully that'll be one of my goals this year in 24 is to do a better job on my socials so that people like you can catch every detail.
Fantastic. Yeah, well, we'll absolutely keep following you, Mike.Ogren over on Instagram. And you prefer the Zuckerberg-based apps, and that's fine. We'll keep an eye on it. Fantastic. Well, look, guys, if you've made it this far into the episode, and why wouldn't you? Because it's been extremely instructive, pardon the pun. Please do follow us. Terrible. British Humor at 9:30 p.m. on a Tuesday. So we're at Strip the Dip. That's the same on Instagram. It's the same on YouTube. It's the same on Twitter. On YouTube, I had a bit of fun. So go and have a look at our 12 Days of Christmas, which was looking back at some of season 2 and some of the highlights we had there. I'm sure that there are some more highlights that we had in season 3. In fact, I'm certain of it. We're really looking forward to the guests we've got. It's been fantastic with Mike today. We had a live with Colin Queen, who, again, another driver we're going to be following in GB3 as he steps up to the kind of F3 equivalent and dreams of racing at Macau. So let's see how he gets on. But until next time, I've been your unusual co-host, F1 Blag. Thanks again to Mike, and we're out. Good night. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Mike.
Yeah, thank you guys. And it got a little chatty, so apologies if I went too long. But
I loved it.
Thank you very much.
Sorry if I got a bit chatty.
No,
Fascinating.
No,
we were enjoying the whole thing.
Yeah.
Good. Like I said, I can talk about this stuff all day. So.
Yeah. And you get to race the cars as well, which is an added bonus.
That's right. That's right.
So I will be sending you the trailers and everything, and this time F1 Blag is the person who will be editing. So there's that.
All right. Awesome. Well, yeah.
No pressure.
Georgie, what time is it there for you?
For me, it's actually 3 o'clock in the morning.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
You scheduled it, not me. So.
Oh, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
Oh, you're still out from your birthday though, right? This is just the cap on your birthday.
Yep.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you very much. I know, like I said, it's late and everything, so appreciate it. And yeah, hopefully we'll chat again soon.
Thank you so much. Have
Real
a nice
pleasure,
evening, Mike.
See you soon.
See ya.
Bye. Thanks, Georgie.
Well, Pat, thank you so much for joining and hosting the first episode of the podcast. You're a famous person, by the way, here.
Well, this guy, he basically told us everything we need to know about 2024, about racing, really fascinating.
Yeah.